Right, let's make a start. My name is John McDonnell. I'm a Labour MP. So just to welcome everybody to this meeting, I'll be chairing it. I'm a Labour MP, but more importantly, I'm a member of UNISON. I've been a member of UNISON since the union was formed, and before that, I was in NUPE. I was a NUPE shop steward. So actually, I'm always part of the archaeology of this union. That's how far we go back. So I'm really pleased to be invited to chair this meeting. And we've been holding a series of these meetings over the last few weeks, inviting UNISON members to come along and to meet with Paul, to allow Paul to set out his ideas about his programme for the future, and also just to discuss the issues that the union faces, what our members face at the moment. And to be honest, the meetings have been terrific, incredibly well attended throughout, but also it's been fantastic just to be able to listen to people's views. There's a series of speakers tonight, and then we'll then question time. There's a number of questions. We've had an open session where people can submit questions, and so I'll be putting, when we have time, I'll be putting questions to Paul and also the other speakers. The most important thing about these meetings is really for you to gauge what Paul's programme is and what whether you support it or not, and if you do, how you can help in our campaign. And the meetings have been terrific, and it's been a real eye-opener as well in terms of some of the issues that people have raised. It's given us a real, for me certainly as an MP, it's given me real feedback on what's happening to our members. I've been saying though at every one of these meetings that for me, this is the most important, almost certainly is the most important election in our union that we've had for decades. It really is, because it isn't just choosing the General Secretary. In choosing the General Secretary this time around, we're going to choose the future of our union and the role that it will play and the way it will operate, actually, the way it will work for the future. So it is key. It is key. If you care about this union, if you care about our members, this is the big one. This is the big decision that we've got to take. The reason I'm backing Paul is because his ideas about the future of the union and the way the union should operate and the way we should go in the future coincide with mine. In fact, when Paul spoke to me about running this time around for General Secretary, and he said, look, these are the ideas I've got, and this is the programme I want. I was just so pleased, because it just meant I had someone to vote for who I knew would be able to deliver the sort of union that I want. And Paul set out his basic ideas, but for me, what it is we want a members' union. I'm not disparaging anyone, but we want our union back. We want our union controlled and democratically by our members, and representing our members and listening to our members and backing them up when they need that backup. And at times in some years, recent years, I haven't felt that. And so I think we need a General Secretary who is determined, exactly as Paul has set out. You know, when you become elected to a position like that, you can be quite powerful. But actually the whole point of Paul's ambition for the union is to give that power back to our members, and particularly to make sure our structures are working effectively and the branch structures are working effectively. And that's where the work gets done, and that's what we need to resource. So I was really pleased when he stood. And the other thing as well, I needed someone who I could trust, who I just had a record of a record of campaigning on behalf of our members, not for self-advancement or career motives or anything like that, just year after year of solid routine work of organising the union, recruiting, organising training, representing, negotiating, and someone who's been a bit battle hardened as well in different disputes and maybe knocked down a few times, but always got up and came back fighting, not for himself but for our members. And that's the sort of person I want as General Secretary, one of us members, our members candidate, and that's what Paul is. So I'm hoping for these meetings people can see Paul Holmes for what he is, the sort of General Secretary that he'd be. Extremely competent, a good negotiator, hard-nosed in those negotiations, effective and professional, of course, in all of that, always doing the always doing to, I suppose, always doing to the best of his ability what he's good at, which is representing us, but also making sure it's empowering our members and giving the union back and our future of the union back to the members to decide and the members themselves to benefit. So that's why I'm supporting Paul, and I'm hoping that people attending this meeting tonight will, but also will go out and talk to others to gain that support. So well, there's a series of speakers. I'm going to invite Paul to speak first, and he'll set out his programme. Then we'll have a number of other speakers, and then hopefully, if we've got time, there's some questions that people have already submitted, and I'll put those to Paul and also some of the other speakers on our panel. Anyway, let me introduce Paul anyway. Paul, it's been a good day today. You picked up another 11 nominations, is that right?
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Tell us about your programme.
Thanks, Chair. We've now got more than 60 nominations, and we're doing really, really well. As John's right, we picked up 11 today. I think I start with a couple of general points, really. One is these meetings have been quite humbling, really. I think that to have ordinary people, of which I am one, to have ordinary members coming on and saying about their hopes and aspirations. I found the meeting we had last night about police and justice really interesting meeting, because that's a bit of a closed world for a lot of our members in local government and health. What is the police and justice section? And when the stewards and the branch secretaries spoke last night, they were talking about the same issues about the families, their aspirations, the working arrangements, as any other group of members would talk about. And I am really keen as having a lay member. It doesn't have to be me, could have been anybody, but I think the time's come now. I don't know if people understand this, but there's two sorts of people can stand to be the General Secretary in the Union. If you've been an employee for 5 years, or you've been a lay member for 5 years, you can stand. And there's about 1,000 employees and about 1 million working members. So we have selected or elected 5 General Secretaries in the 5 elections we've had so far from the 0.001% of the electorate, and none from the 99.99% of the electorate, which is the lay members. So for me, I'm really keen on this. As a socialist and a trade unionist, I believe there's untapped potential in thousands and thousands, millions of people. And there is no jobs that ordinary people can't do. There's some jobs that some people with money don't want ordinary people to do. And we've seen for a long time in Parliament, particularly the sort of 97 to 2017 period, where actually the base of the class base of the party wasn't represented in Parliament. That the ordinary people couldn't get to be trade union representatives in Parliament. Now, I am firmly of the opinion that we can do anything. And it's ensconced in the rule book. The rule book says we're a lay member-led union. Now, my experience is vast. I've been a steward for 40 years, been a member for 40 years. I've been the branch secretary for 31 years of the 7th or 8th biggest UNISON branch out of 830. I've been on the NEC for 13 years, been elected 7 times. I was on the NEC and Elgo in the late 80s, and I've been on the national pay negotiations. UNISON consists of 7 service groups. I've been a branch secretary of 5 of those service groups members. So voluntary sector, community voluntary sector, local government, police, universities, water, environment, probation. So I've covered, apart from health and energy, covered a wide expanses of the union's membership. But for me, it's not about, have you sat in a chair for 40 years? Have you done some admin in the union? I've got a record in the union. It's a record, I think, other people can speak about it better than I can, but it's a record where when I'm at conference, the National Delegate Conference or the Local Government Service Group Conference, people say, oh, when you were speaking, Paul, I want to make sure I'm in the conference hall for that. And that's really, that might sound egotistical, but it's quite heartwarming, because people want to hear articulated what they think. I can't remember who said this once, but I think Owen Jones's book, Chavs, you know, a good book is when you read what you've been thinking, put in the right order and expressed really well. that is often a good hook. And, you know, when we have joint union meetings in Kirklees, you often hear in the audience, the pride of the membership. You often hear out, you know, say there's 6 or 7 joint trade union speakers. You'll hear UNISON members saying, oh, if you think this person's good, wait till you hear our branch secretary. He can bring the house down. And that is absolutely humbling and actually invigorating experience. So I'm standing to be General Secretary because I believe in this union, but I'm standing because I represent something. I'm not standing because I want to be the king or the queen of UNISON. I want an enormous salary, or I think it's some career opportunity or some job career for me. I'm not interested in that. If I wanted to do that, I would have done that a long time ago. You know, I've spent the last 31 years sat opposite chief officers who I think, how did you get to be a chief officer? Knowing that our members, hundreds and hundreds of them, are capable of doing any job in the council. That's a firm political belief that I've got. So I believe that the General Secretary should be on a worker's wage, and that's what I'm standing on, £32,000. But not because I'm a hair shirt or I believe that somehow we should live like monks. It's not that. I'm in Picasso's camp. When they asked Picasso if he wanted to live a rich lifestyle, and he said, no, I don't. I want to live a working class lifestyle, but I want to have lots of money. And that's my aspiration for everybody. I don't want to climb up some pole at somebody else's expense. So £32,000 a year is what I get as a legal officer in Kirklees Council. And that's what I get as the branch secretary. And that's what hundreds of branch secretaries get across Britain in UNISON. They get paid the terms and conditions of pay of those they represent. And I'm perfectly happy with that. The other thing is that I think more jobs should be elected. The National Executive is elected, but I also think the General Secretary, the Assistant General Secretaries and the Regional Secretaries should be elected. At the moment, the only one that is the General Secretary. And I think them roles are the 12 Regional Secretaries in the 12 regions and the 5 Assistant General Secretaries are key roles, and they should be elected, they should be accountable, and they should be elected every 5 years. And the reason I think that is that the lines become blurred between what it means to be an employee of the union and what it means to be an activist in the union. Now, an employee is paid on terms and conditions to work in a job, and that is a perfectly valid thing to do, and those people should be paid a salary, a pension, terms and conditions that are negotiated by their union for working for UNISON. But the elected officials that should be the public face of this union, publicly accountable face of this union, I think should all be elected. And so not only do I think the General Secretary should go forward and represent this union, but I think them other posts should. We should spread the burden. We have never appeared on Question Time, the General Secretary or any other senior official in this union, for 20 years. The most watched political programme in Britain. It's got viewing figures of 3.4 million people. And you know as well as I do that half the time you don't watch it because there's nobody decent on. But if there's somebody decent on, you want to watch it. Bob Crow's going to be on, Len McCluskey's going to be on, you want to watch it because you want to hear what they've got to say. You might not agree with them, but at least it's somebody representing your point of view, your side of the argument. So for me, this union hasn't acted or fought its weight and size for a long time. The majority of our members wouldn't believe that we're the biggest union in Britain because we don't act like the biggest union in Britain. And for me, there's an argument about the workers' wage. There's an argument about democracy. When we nominate people for important positions in the Labour movement, it should come as no surprise to anybody. The members who are in that area should have been consulted on who we're nominating, should know when we're going to nominate them, know what the process is, and then know who we've nominated. Shouldn't be revealed to them in the newspaper or on the television. Democracy involves involvement, and that's part of the issue about representing the members. Now, people say to me, oh, there's a poor turnout in some ballots for pay, or there's a poor turnout if the members don't believe we're serious. Any workplace that you go to where members have got a problem, and they've got hundreds of problems, then they want to know what's the union's plan and do I take the union seriously? So we've just had a major pay exercise in local government covering Northern Ireland, England and Wales. And in that exercise, we voted not to take industrial action to accept the offer, but the members didn't want to accept the offer. In the one region that absolutely pulled all the stops out to campaign against the offer, it was the highest high turnout, and the rejection. The members want to know if you're serious or not. Every single member, particularly if you're low paid, thinks, why should I go on a one-day strike where the union boasts that they've increased recruitment figures? But all that happens to the member is they've lost a day's pay that probably equates to 2/3 of the pay rise that they're seeking for that year. They're just throwing the pay rise away. So the members need to know that you're serious, and they need to know there's no surprises. They need to know that they're involved in the process. But they also need to know that we're on the front foot, not the back foot. The front foot is we're here for the members. I don't care what the employers think about us. It's of no consequence. As John alluded to earlier, when you go into the negotiations, you act courteously, you act forthrightly, and you act to achieve what you're going in for. But what the employer is thinking is, what backing has Paul got from his members? They don't look at my face. They look at the stewards that are sat with me or over my shoulder at the members in the distance, and they think, has he got their support? And that's why we've got to change this whole attitude to how we fight issues. What's going to be coming? There's no doubt the financial crisis will come in before coronavirus, and it will be expanded and extended after it. As Winston Churchill said, never waste a good crisis. And they've already started. They've fired and rehired at Tower Hamlets. They threatened to do it at British Gas to thousands of employees, including a lot of our members. And they threatened it at the University of Sheffield, where we've rebuked and rebuffed them. But that will be the music of the future. You've got to win the first dozen disputes in that battle, or you'll set the tone. Once one employer sees it, another employer's got away with it, then they will come for it. They think, oh God, I often used to get that in Kirklees when we were in pay strikes. You know, our employer would say, how come other unions are exempting more people in the dispute? How come Kirklees are doing this? How come Kirklees are doing that? Because that's what we've talked to our members about. That's what our members are supporting. And the members don't support you unless they've spoken to you and they've talked to you. Now, I'm an ordinary member of this unit, and I'm seeking to be the General Secretary because I want to transform how we act. You read the nomination letter, you can see that, the things that I'm talking about, selling the 2 prestige offices in London, giving 50% of the income to the branches. Majority of our members will think there's more than that go to the branches. They won't realise it. The average is less than 25% of subscription income. 90% of the work's in the branches, 90%. And every branch secretary in the country, in UNISON, is faced with a grind. And we want to chase the grind. We don't want being a branch secretary or a convener to be a grind. When we go on demonstrations at Toll Puddle or the Durham Miners Gala, we look at banners and we're inspired by the pictures on them, the slogans on them, and the background on them. And that's what we want to be as trade. Nobody joined the union to become an administrator. Nobody joined the union to tell people bad news. They want to achieve, you know, there's about 3 reasons for becoming a shop steward. Some of them are combined, but often it's in the workplace, you see something going wrong and nobody's doing anything about it. And you realise if you don't, nothing's going to be done about it. And it's an organic process, the relationship between the branch and the union. This is the problem. We ring the union up, the union comes and sees us, that we tell them what the problem is, they tell us how we think we can sort it out, but then they also say to us, how do you think we can sort it out? How can we back you? And they're the final 2 points I'm going to make, really. We're going to have to change the slogan on this union from you can't do it and we won't do it, to you can do it and we will do it. We'll be saying to people, we can't say to people that we want you to be a steward, we want you to be an health and safety rep, we want you to put your neck on the line, but we'll disappear if there's any problem. I remember speaking on a picket line at a rally, in 1989, in the local government strike, and I'll go local government strike in 1989 in Huddersfield. Massive support from NALGO members, far more members out on strike than we actually had members. And the bloke stood next to, well, I assume it was a bloke, the person stood next to me, speaking, supporting us from the local branch of the NUR, the railway union, had a paper bag over his head with 2 holes cut in it. And that was because the nationalised industry that was British Rail at that moment in time would discipline and dismiss people who spoke against company policy, even if we're union officials. And we have to be really clear on that. Our first job when we go to any area in Britain as a general secretary is to visit the union branch, not the employer. Our first job to the health and safety reps and the stewards is we've got your back. If there's a smell of anybody victimising you, then we're balloting, we're behind you. And then you give the people the confidence to do what we need to do to represent our members. Because there is only the branches and the members. There is nothing else. This union, if it didn't have branches and members, it'd have nothing. It's not a building society or a bank that collects money. It's not a property company that develops and buys big buildings, fancy buildings, that look as good as somebody else's office. It's a vehicle for protecting the true assets of our members. And the true assets of the union are our members' terms and conditions, our members' pay and our pension. And every single penny we've got, and I say every single penny, every bit of resource, every full-time officer working for this union should be behind that. We're not interested in having a savings fund. We're interested in our members being able to defend themselves. We set up a review in 2011 of the resources for this union and how they could be best used. And that review still has not been completed and won't be completed till 2022 at the earliest for implementation. Not good enough. Things have changed. At the beginning of this year, who would have guessed that the big issues would have been A-level results, coronavirus, health workers' pay? Who would have guessed it would have been Black Lives Matter? Things are moving fast. The union isn't. We need to change the union. This is a campaign for all of us to have a union that is worthy of the members. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks very much. That was terrific. Really inspiring. Thank you very much, Paul. Well, we've got a series of speakers. Our first speaker is Anna Thompson. Anna's a health visitor in the Hull and East Riding Health Branch. Anna.
Oh, thanks, John. Thanks, Paul, and hello to everyone. Yeah, I'm a health visitor in Hull, and I've worked in public health for the last 10 years, school nurse and a health visitor. And during this time, oh, there's my son. During this time, I've obviously seen the cruel effects of austerity on the families that I work for, and also the pressures that all the staff that within my team are facing. As a health visitor, I don't work in isolation. I work closely with a lot of other public services, whether that's schools, children's centres, social care, and mental health workers. And I see those staff at crisis point. I see those staff working extremely hard and all the faces with mainly risk management rather than those preventative services. Like a lot of health services now, the company I work for is no longer under the NHS. I'm actually employed by a private company. And over these past 10 years, I've seen terms and conditions changing. We have a two-tier pay scale, whether that's corporate funding, corporate wages, or the Agenda for Change wages. I've seen our policies changing as well over time. The partnership working with my company and UNISON is extremely poor. I have very low and minimal facility time, so I cannot support or represent the members that I would want to and that they deserve. So that's why that I totally agree with Paul in saying that it is time for a real change within UNISON, that we do need that funding for branches. We need all that extra facility time to represent our members like we should do, to represent them like they deserve. We need to empower our members and give that confidence and trust back to the members to be able to make our branches stronger. We need that to be able to fight for all these services and what's happening to our families that we work for and the community. So I feel that this is actually a movement as well. And it's not just a case of benefiting workers and members. I feel that it's benefiting everybody. And that's why I wholeheartedly will be supporting Paul. And with fire in my belly, I'll be there. And I will also encourage all members to do exactly the same. So.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks a lot. Okay. And say good evening to your son for us as well. He's a big lad, isn't he?
Yeah, I've got three boys.
Anyway, great. That's great. And just also, thanks for them really just explaining what it's like on the ground as well. And I don't think, you know, a lot of the general public, in my constituency as well, I don't think many of them really know the extent of privatisation that's gone on, and the way people have been shifted into private companies over the years, and they still think it's, you know, the NHS, public service, and all the rest, and don't realise the scale of privatisation has gone on, but it's still going on as well. When you explain it to them, they get pretty angry as well. Right, our next speaker. Anyway, thanks, Anna. Our next speaker is Grace Dowswell. She's Tyneside-based NHS worker. Grace.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can. Don't worry.
Hi, thanks a lot, John, Paul, and Anna. I'm Grace. I'm a trainee cognitive behavioural therapist in Tees, Eskin, We Advance Trust. I'm a Labour member, I'm obviously a UNISON member, and I'm a Socialist appeal supporter. As I'm sure everyone's aware, it's been a very stressful and uncertain time for workers in the NHS. We're having to deal with temporary contracts, the higher risks and the workloads that are coming out of COVID, all the cuts to services, and obviously, as has been mentioned, the privatisations and all of the problems that come with that. I've actually just moved across the country for a job myself after the NHS service that I was working in decided to get rid of all of its temporary staff. Obviously, that causes a lot of instability and stress for people. But at the same time, I think class consciousness and mobilisation amongst workers is massively on the rise. I think COVID's made it clearer than ever how essential we are as workers, how it's us that keep the cogs turning in society. You know, everyone's seen very clearly that without us, the economy grinds to a halt. There's no one to treat sick people, there's no way to buy food. It's really kind of brought into the light of day how indispensable we are, and that we're the ones who create the wealth and who really hold the power in society. And that's contributed to this massive increase in union membership that we've seen alongside COVID since, particularly since March. You know, people are scared, they're insecure in their jobs, they're having their wages and their conditions driven down, but they're also being proactive, you know, they're joining a union. And I think that's something that has so much potential for us fighting to improve our pay and conditions and actually winning. But if we're going to do that, if we're going to be successful in achieving everything that we're capable of achieving as workers, we need to seize the moment with a leadership that has the ideas, the principles, and the experience to lead that kind of real change. Without solid leadership that's capable of organising a proper fighting union, we don't have a fraction of the power that we could have. UNISON's current leadership are on six-figure salaries, while, as Paul's obviously mentioned, he's running on a promise of taking a £32,000 a year salary, the same as he's on in his current job. Doesn't that just show that he's not in it for the money, and also that he's serious about keeping himself grounded, you know, keeping himself in touch with the lives and the conditions of the rank and file? UNISON's currently very bureaucratic and undemocratic union, which has been mentioned, and obviously Paul wants to change that and hand money and power back to the branches. I think that's so important. The current leadership have their own staff on temporary contracts, and they did absolutely nothing to respond to the leaked Labour report that showed that in the 2017 general election, Labour would almost certainly have won if it wasn't for right-wing sabotage in the party. Paul, on the other hand, has shown time and again through years and years of leading disputes, leading strikes, leading his branch, that he can be trusted to fight with us for everything that we can get, and also that he's serious about fighting for socialism. Up until now, the UNISON leadership, I think, is quite plainly not being the leadership that we need to fight for us and our interests in our workplaces or in politics. Because workers' rights are inherently political, you know, our pay and conditions are dependent on the economic and political situation that we live in. We need a leader who's going to fight for us in the Labour Party and stay true to the aims and the values of the British workers' movement historically, you know, the common ownership of the means of production, distribution and exchange. I think Paul's the only person in this race who has the record and the politics to change UNISON and to lead a transformation towards making it a union that's going to fight alongside workers for everything that we deserve. Thanks.
Grace, thanks ever so much for that. That was terrific. It's interesting you raised the issue of part-time and temporary workers as well. We found that the scale of temporary work now is extraordinary, and it's pushed on people, forced upon them, and also the way in which people are having to fight for hours as well. And I think it really is exploitative. You made reference to the leaked report. Obviously we have to be careful. It's allegations at the moment, and there's an inquiry going on, etc. There's some people that are litigious about matters like this. So these are allegations, but you know, if true, are extremely serious because they cost us a Labour government if it's true. And again, it's important that we have people representing us in the Labour Party. We're, you know, one of the biggest affiliates of the Labour Party. It's important that we have people representing us that will make sure the Labour Party adheres to policies that protect our members' interests and promotes them, of course. So it's a key role that we haven't really focused on so much in these meetings, but it is absolutely critical. Our next speaker is Kathryn Herbert. She's a steward at the Wigan Branch and striker at the We Are With You, formerly Addaction. Is Kathryn with us? Because there's different names up on the screen and I can never complete. Oh, you are, brilliant.
Hi everybody. Just to clarify, I'm not Kathryn. Unfortunately, Kathryn couldn't be with us tonight. My name's Kay Winard. I'm the branch secretary from the branch. I'm standing in for Kathryn, if that's okay with everybody.
That's great. That's great. I thought you were Kathryn under assumed name.
Yeah. No.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Kay. That's terrific.
Okay. Well, thank you for having us. First of all, just to say that as a branch, we are supporting Paul because, you know, we think he's, as Grace just said, he's embodying the principles that as a branch that we hold dear. So we're 100% behind him. And I know that in terms of the strike that we're going through at the moment, I'm sorry, I've made some notes, so I'm looking down. I do apologise. We've got a group of workers, there's currently 29 of them, and the dispute is about the employer is refusing to pay them what would have been the 2018 to 21 NHS pay award because they were originally NHS staff who have been TP'd over to a company called We Are With You, formerly known as Addaction, not to be confused with Prince. And they're about to embark on the 16th day of strike action. So we've taken 16. We've taken six. I'm sorry, I've got all confused now. We've taken 16 days of action, and we're about to take another 10, starting on Monday in a socially distanced strike. That strike was put on hold because of COVID and because of the work that these workers do, the drug and alcohol workers. It's absolutely vital work in our community where there is high levels of drug and alcohol misuse. And they wanted to be there, so there was an agreement that strike would be put on hold while they've gone out and been key workers. And on average, these workers are going to lose about £4,000 each through the company's refusal to pay that. They have offered non-consolidation, but that's not right. That's not what these workers need, because yes, they might get that money, but in 2021 they're still in the same position, if not technically worse. I think what particularly sticks in the guts for us is that this company's just spent £140,000 rebranding themselves as We Are With You. And they clearly aren't with us. They clearly aren't with the workers who are doing the work that they're profiting from. You know, and I think what we've found is that these workers have become really mobilised. They're really fearless. We've just achieved recognition, which has been a battle, and they've stood firm, and they haven't accepted those silly offers to go away and be quiet, because they're not going to go away and be quiet, because now is not the time to go away or be quiet. And I think that, for speaking as the experiences we've been through with the strike, which has been one of the biggest strikes that we have ever witnessed in a long time in our branch, at this moment we need strong leadership. We need fearless leadership. We need leadership that is real, is realistic, and knows what it's like to be out there. I think we need a dose of blunt reality, and that's what we know we're going to get from Paul, and that's why we're backing Paul. So you know, because I think that right now we all need to empower each other, and be gaining that strength and that courage from a leadership that can take us where we need to be at the moment. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks ever so much for that. If you could pass a message back to the branch and the strikers on solidarity from us, okay? And also,
I will do. Thank you.
And also, if you can get me some of the details of that, I'll get a motion down in Parliament, okay? If you
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
That's right. We just need to expose what some of these employers have been doing. It's appalling. And I just think it is. Just pass on a message of solidarity and say, look, we salute their courage in standing up for this, and it is a key issue of principle as well. Thanks so much, Kay, for stepping in. Our final speaker is Glen Williams. Glen, most of you will know, is the convener in the Northwest region. Glen.
Thanks very much indeed, John. Just before I start, can I just ask if you see anybody coming in behind me, can you let me know, because it means I'm getting burgled. Can I also just say, it's fortuitous, I didn't realise Kay was coming on into the meeting. It's fortuitous that Kay's spoken, as she always does so brilliantly. Kay's from our region, and it's no coincidence that the support she's getting is fantastic from our region. But this is a national dispute. They're a national employer, and it just so happens, and this is not a coincidence, that national company, so-called charitable company, is being taken on by our Northwest region. So I'm really pleased to hear, John, what you suggested. You might be able to put a motion down before Parliament. That would be superb. For those who don't know me, my name is Glen Williams. I am chair of the Local Government Service Group Exec, representing 650,000 members, who recently made history by nominating Paul Holmes. The first time ever a national service group has supported the candidature of a lay member. So I'm really pleased to have been part of that. And I'll come back to why that wasn't a coincidence. For tonight's meeting, I'm speaking in a personal capacity, but I'm also regional convener of the biggest region in the country, the Northwest, 200,000 members, who've already provided more branches than any other region in support of Paul Holmes. And that's not a coincidence either. And one of the many reasons I'm supporting Paul is because the principles that he lives by and wants his campaign to abide by are ones of inclusion, democracy, and transparency. And that's part of the reason I think over time, our region and the Local Government Service Group has managed to become what Paul represents in this campaign. It's no surprise or coincidence that the Local Government Service Group supported Paul, because we've become more inclusive, more transparent, more accountable. Despite some of the office of bureaucratic opposition to that, we've managed to achieve that. And in terms of our regional position, it's no coincidence that our branches are lining up, as you've just heard from Kay Renard, to support Paul and his radical manifesto of change. Because in the Northwest, it's taken us years, but we've achieved what Paul wants to achieve within sort of 3 to 6 months when he's elected General Secretary. Because what we believe in and what Paul believes in and what we've achieved in the Northwest region is a far greater power sharing between the selected and the elected. And that's what Paul's manifesto embodies. So when Paul's radical manifesto talks about taking on the bureaucracy. They're not merely words, and it's no wonder the establishment and the bureaucracy do not want Paul Holmes to be the General Secretary. He's already mentioned some of the radical elements of his programme. He will shift 50% of the finances and resources away, to the branches. Currently, we get less than 25%. It means headquarters get 75%. Paul's programme is suggesting that should be 50-50, and the branches can decide how best to spend that money. That's radical, and it's no wonder it's being opposed. Paul wants to make the selected far more accountable, far more transparent, far more democratically accountable by making them electable. The GS, the AGS is 5 of them, the regional secretaries, 12 of them, quite rightly should be elected, transparent and accountable. So it's no wonder that power shift political position that Paul's adopted, a lot of P's in there, I won't be saying that again, that he's adopted, or why it makes Paul's manifesto so different, as does his working wage, as does his physical resource shift, moving the headquarters, yes, keeping a nominal office in London, but not some £100 million building. Everybody deserves to work in comfortable surroundings. That can be done in the Midlands. We've all learned to work virtually over the last 6 months. So Paul, I believe what Paul is trying to do is create what we've already created in the Northwest, but it's taken us years, and it's taken us some difficult conversations. And what sadly happens in the 11 of the other regions is if you have a good idea, but you happen to be a so-called ultra or a trot or a lefty, the good idea is castigated and abandoned. Now, what we've learned to do, what Paul's platform is suggesting that we do, is we forget the political labels. A good idea is a good idea wherever it comes from. We should embrace it, adopt it, and enact it. And that's what Paul is talking about. And he literally is putting, not literally, he's putting his money where his mouth is in terms of his salary. He's putting his money where his mouth is in terms of the branch funding. And he's putting his money in his mouth in terms of this being a truly lay member-led union. So some of the positive examples, I think, in the Northern region, they have a tremendous programme. I don't know how they do it, of recruiting great young member activists. And I want to learn from that as regional convener of our union. That's frowned upon in our union. There's three regions in our union who do lots and lots of really positive international work. It's frowned upon in our union. It's frowned upon as going behind the bureaucracy. I want to learn more. In the Yorkshire Humberside, there's a fantastic historical tradition of understanding what solidarity means and standing with people in struggle. And that's frowned upon by the bureaucracy. And what Paul's platform, what his manifesto is doing, is he is embodying that in a new type of union. So one of the other things Paul hasn't said yet is he wants to be able to feel proud to say he's in UNISON. I am really proud of being in Northwest UNISON. I'm not yet proud to say I'm in UNISON. And I'm proud because in our region, we are the one region who campaigned actively and led the way, I think, in the NJC local government pay. And we rejected it. And we rejected it because we had the arguments. I think we're inclusive. I think we're transparent. I think we're democratic. And I think we're getting there. But we cannot afford to wait. It took us 6 or 7 years to get that in our Northwest region. And we have not got that time. We face a pandemic backlash, like as Paul has described, like no other. So if you want real change, if you want a radical programme, you've got no choice. You have to support Paul Holmes. And if you are in the Northwest listening to this, and you are a regional council delegate coming on Saturday the 19th, please make sure your colleagues are coming on the 19th. So next time I'm on one of these meetings, I can say the biggest service group voted to nominate for Paul Holmes, as did the biggest region. So thanks very much. Thanks very much for your time. Thanks for listening. Real change is Paul Holmes. Thanks very much, John.
Glenn, thanks so much. Thanks for that. That's really grateful. And also just grateful for your solid support, I know, which is based upon years of experience of working with campaigning together as well, which is great. I want to go to questions. We've got about a quarter of an hour, so we might be able to get through quite a few of these. We've had quite a few submitted, and I'll go through them as they've come in. The first question, I want to put this to Paul, but I'd like the others to come in as well, if you can add to it as well on all of these. The question is this, I have read online that the UNISON NEC vote today was taken using an exhaustive vote system with no prior discussion, and that using it was tabled during the meeting when no other election within Unison uses exhaustive voting, including the General Secretary election. What was going on today, and do you approve of using exhaustive voting? Paul or anyone, can you fill this in? What's been happening today?
Well, I can only repeat what you read online, Chair, that the candidates weren't invited to address the National Executive today. There were no hustings there. So the voting took place not in a public arena. And I've heard what I've read online, that an exhaustive ballot. I've never heard Unison using that before. And it certainly wasn't spoken about before the meeting started today. And it won't be the system that's being used in the ballot for the General Secretary election. I've always opposed an exhaustive ballot. I've always been a first past the post person. I've got colleagues who disagree with me on that. But at the end of the day, I think voting is a positive thing. You positively vote for who you want to win. And that's how most unions conduct the ballots. And that's, to be honest, that's how the people of Britain voted in the referendum on balloting. And I don't really understand how that system could be changed after a meeting started today. But as I said, I only know what you've read online.
I don't know if anyone else wants to comment at all. Yeah, Glenn?
Yeah, just to add that my understanding is that process has never, ever been used for any General Secretary nomination meeting of the NEC. So it's interesting it was introduced for the first time with no notice today. And the second thing I'd say is, you'd think we've got 50 odd people on this meeting, there's been no technological hitches at all. You'd think a Unison of our size might be able to manage the technology of a meeting of about 50 to 60 people. And my understanding is the technological difficulties were fraught by some, not all. So I'm not in any way, shape or form suggesting there was skullduggery, but there was certainly shenanigans in terms of the process being adopted today, would be my personal view.
Wow, okay. It's just that from my point of view, it's difficult to understand why a significant change in the electoral procedure is introduced, well, without consultation and during a meeting. It breaks all precedent. I'm amazed, I'm staggered. That's something I think that maybe some of us should be raising, because, well, it's just not right. It's just not right. And it's a bit, whoever benefited from this is a bit brazen, to be honest. It brings, it brings things into disrepute if we're not careful. If we have shenanigans like this, that's the problem, and members lose faith in the whole process. I'm amazed. Okay, let's move on. The second question is to Paul, really. How is your campaign going? I hear that the only region in Unison to have a hustings so far is the southeast, and they backed you. Can we do it in the northwest on Saturday? It was the thing that Glenn referred to. Paul, how is it going? What are the hustings like that you've been doing?
Well, the hustings meetings are interesting. You'll understand this, John. It's difficult speaking at meetings. We get no feedback because the hustings meetings are all Zoom, etc. They're all online meetings, but they're going really, really well. At the end of week 2, there's a 7-week campaign. At the end of week 2, we got 6 nominations, and I think at the end of week 3, we've probably got 13 or 14. At this moment in time, we've got 60 plus, and there's a week and a half to go yet. We've got the nomination of the biggest service group, representing 2/3 of the membership, and we've got the nomination of the only region I know that's held a hustings meeting so far, and that was a good meeting. And the more that's involved, the better, as far as I'm concerned. There'll be a big meeting this Saturday in the northwest because it's their nomination meeting from that region, and that is the biggest region. That's the most campaigning region, and I've got either 19 or 20 nominations in that region already, and they're coming in. I can't keep up with the list at this moment in time. So the campaigns are going really well, but that's like arithmetic campaign. What has been really good about the campaign and about these public meetings we've been holding, etc., is the number of volunteers. I found it quite moving, really, the number of people who volunteered to help, the number of people who've said, "Oh, I've switched candidates who I was supporting because I've seen some of the public meetings you've held." And I think the best speech I've heard at any meeting was the meeting you were at, John, where the speaker from the Manchester branch, who was a cleaner, Rosetta, spoke and explained why she felt that she was supporting me and my candidature, because of the improvements she saw that would make for herself and her members. And when people who are low-paid, part-time female workers are looking to you to improve their terms and conditions, quite a moving experience. You know, I am not in favour of some incremental defence of what's going on, that somehow somebody loses only a bit of their pension, or a little bit of their salary, or 5% of their own social hours payment. I'm aspirational. You know, people get involved in the union and in politics to improve things. When I first got involved in the union, we were talking about the 25-hour week, and we still should be talking about the 25-hour week on full pay. So the campaign's going really well. I think people are inspired by it. I think we're now the main opposition in this election now. I think we've got a real chance, and because we've got the one thing that I think you need in campaigns. We've got momentum, things are moving, you can see people visibly lifted by how the campaign's going, and that's great.
Key thing is turnout, isn't it?
Yeah.
On all of this, it's turnout, and I think that's why these meetings have been so important, because they have been inspirational. I remember Rosetta's speech. I thought it was excellent, her intervention. It really brought us down to earth in terms of what the realities of what this election is all about. And it is about improving the lives of our members. So I think it is about making sure we get a good turnout. And I think it's the point you made at one of the meetings. The turnout in General Secretary elections and all this in the past has been abysmal, really poor. And we just need to get people out there and feel part of the union, contributing. And by the way, I've just had a text to say you've just been nominated in Portsmouth as well. So it goes on. Next question is this. What type of pressure would you put on companies like FCC who are blatantly victimising trade union reps?
Well, I think we've got to be really clear on that, because FCC, which is a waste company in Hull, the rep that they've sacked there, I know personally. He came to our branch in Kirklees in Huddersfield when they were on strike the other year, and were brilliant speaker, spoke at our branch, brilliant speaker, and the sort of representative that this union so sorely needs. And I covered it really in my open remarks, that Tony Smith in the whole branch got the full support of the branch and the Trades Council, but he needs to get the full support of the whole union. We need to say to these companies, look, you're after public money, you're after public contracts, then you've got to behave. And I didn't make that comment lightly that I made earlier on in the 1989 strike about NUR officials speaking with a paper bag over their head with their eye sockets cut out in holes in the front. That wasn't a joke. I didn't make that up. That's what they did to avoid being dismissed. Now, this bloke has put his head above the parapet to represent his members, and he deserves the full 100% backing. And we'll be saying to every steward, every health and safety rep, the ballots start now. If you start picking on, you don't have to take, once you've won 2 or 3 disputes like that, when they know you mean business, then they start talking to you. So let's mean business.
Yeah. There's got to be a bottom line, hasn't there, really, in terms of we're not having our members, our reps victimised. And there's got to be a line in the sand that we draw on that from here on in once you're elected. The next issue, regional pay bargaining. What are Paul's views?
Well, it's an interesting debate, that, because I remember a debate 5 or 6 years ago in UNISON, where there's probably, I don't know what the numbers are, but there are a few branches, a few employers in local government in UNISON, particularly in the southeast region, where they're not on the national pay bargaining. And the reason for that is they actually paid above the national pay bargaining rate, because it's virtually impossible to recruit people who can afford to live in them areas on the national pay rates. And the union had a position, which I slightly disagreed with really, that we should always be on national pay bargaining. Well, I agree with national pay bargaining if the reason for being on national pay bargaining is that you want to use the full strength of the union to achieve a better result than you would regionally. But actually what some of the employers, the local government employers, would like to stay on national pay bargaining because the settlement were rubbish. And they thought, oh God, this is really good. 0% pay offer or 0.5% pay offer is rubbish. And we received a situation when the national minimum wage was brought in by the Labour government in the late 90s, the lowest wage in local government was 20% above that. There was a period 4 or 5 years ago where we had to have an emergency meeting of the national pay negotiations in local government because the lowest paid rate in local government had fallen below the national minimum wage. In October, we had to bring in the pay rise April to April, a 5p pay rise to keep the lowest paid workers, the cleaners, on the national minimum wage. So I am opposed to regional pay bargaining, but what I'm opposed to more than that is poor pay. And it's the best solution to achieving good pay. Now, without a shadow of a doubt, the best solution is full national bargaining, full national action. But if we're not going to get that, then we've got to talk about how we're going to get decent pay. Because Scotland have gone separate on their own negotiations, part of the evolution, but they've had better pay rises than we've had. So we need to say to the members, we're going to be serious, or else the pressure will come from regional pay bargaining.
Okay, we're not going to get through these all. So we've got a couple of minutes left, but final question I can put then is this a bit long. Lots of members have been working from home for more than 6 months. Members are standing the costs of home working themselves. Many organisations are seeing an opportunity in the crisis and are looking for the staff to fund their own office accommodation. In the next few weeks, many low-paid office workers will be having to choose whether to turn the heating on or not. What should UNISON be doing about this? Because currently, UNISON seems silent on the issue. This is about home working, which is becoming a key issue.
Yeah. Well, home working is a time-limited issue. You know, when you first start home working, a lot of our members, you know, the one big dramatic change in work over the last 30 years for a lot of our members is how far they travel to work. That is multiplied beyond belief. You know, when I started work, loads of people used to go to work on a moped or a push bike or a walk. Now that's virtually unheard of now because people travel huge distances to work, which is part of the working day. So what they see in not travelling to work initially is less of a headache, less costs, sandwiches, shops, public transport costs, etc. That's what they see initially, but not everybody's got a home environment where you can work. And I know about members work, you know, in single bed accommodation who were sat on the bed working. So we start getting health and safety problems because people haven't got proper reasonable adjustments. I start seeing members now buying desks, buying all sorts of support furniture that the council or the employer would normally buy. People are getting socially isolated. People are having to deal with issues where they can't work the hours that the employer wants them to work. There's the issue when the winter comes of the absolute increase in the costs. There'll be the friction as well between some people who have to go to work, bin workers or street cleaners, and those who don't. And the fact that when you're working from home, you're not struggling to get to work in bad weather conditions. Then there's other issues to add on top of that. People are at the end of the tether on home working now. It's a bit like in the health service. 6 months is too much of it. The sort of gloss has worn off, really. It's hard to work in isolation if you're used to discussing with other people on a daily basis what problems are. And another big issue, which loads of branches aren't raising, because it's never been pointed out to them, is a lot of insurance cover at work is very clear. When you've clocked in or you've gone through the front door at work, then the council's insurance will cover you. That isn't as clear at home. When and when not are people clocking in? Are they clocking out for 10 minutes? Like, I think we need a whole audit of what each council has as regards insurance for home working and the costs of home working. It's not, you know, people, there'll be a price to pay with bad backs. There'll be a price to pay for home working. And it's got to be, it's like anything else about work. It needs to be covered by an agreement. Because the minute something goes wrong, the minute somebody falls down the stairs and kills themselves, and then there's a big debate, were they at work or weren't they at work? And so it's a big debate and it involves money.
Paul, thanks a lot. We've run out of time, but do you want to say a last few words before we close the meeting?
Yeah. Well, I want to thank John for chairing the meeting, as I always do. He always chairs it in a brilliant fashion. But I want to say, as part of the campaign, and I never say this, I never say anything different to this, it is not my campaign. It is our campaign. And for the people who sort of come to watch for the first time tonight, people spoke, the majority of people who are speaking at these meetings, I've never met. But that's not the point. The point is they've got an aspiration for the members. And if this union is going to change, changing the General Secretary is only the first piece in the jigsaw. If we want to launch a union that more reflects what Glen Williams were talking about, the sort of work that they're doing, the admirable work they're doing in the Northwest, we need to talk to each other about what works and what doesn't work, but we need to get on board this train. This train is bound for glory, so let's get involved in it. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks, Paul. Can I say that's terrific, absolutely terrific. Can I thank Anna, Grace, Glenn, and Kay? And Kay, thanks for standing in. It's been a terrific meeting. Can I thank everyone who's attending? Final message, just go out and talk to fellow members of UNISON. Inspire them, because we need their support now. This is so significant, this election. This really is a groundbreaking election that we need your support on. Thanks for coming tonight. All the best.